Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the podcast. My name is Bella and we're here for another week, which is very exciting because we're 1 week closer to Christmas and I'm starting to feel a little bit festive. I started listening to Christmas songs yesterday. I did have a little sneak peek last week because I was so hungover. I felt like it was the only way I was going to be able to tackle the hangover was through listening to Christmas songs, and I can confirm it did help. But I can also confirm it didn't quite think I'm ready to be Christmassy yet, and I'm starting to think maybe I am. Maybe we're time for a little bit of a decoration moment. But let's go over this week's, because since we last spoke, I cannot lie, I'm really just grafting at the moment. This feels like a little work period, which I've seen so many social media posts about like it being really important to like, like your winter arc and really focusing on like growing into the person that you want to become and this person that you want to be. How important it is not to isolate yourself socially. And that's something that I've been quite like aware of over the past couple of weeks, because I've noticed that when there's a lot going on at work, I tend to prioritize like spending time relaxing, spending time like on my own, spending time with my boyfriend, just because I feel like I need to debrief and like, just like have a moment. But that's not always actually healthy, in the way that it can really mean that you isolate yourself from the people around you because you spend so long focusing on the things that you think are going to make you feel better in the moment, that then you end up feeling worse because you've isolated yourself and you haven't had your social battery recharged in a way that is fun and engaging. And like, it's important to have that community of people around you. And I think there is this danger in the moment, like at the moment works a lot. Like there's a lot of stuff going on for everyone. Like where if you ask anyone working in the corporate world, Christmas is busy, especially in medcoms. Like Christmas is really busy. And so the run up to that is busy. And I think it's really easy to lean towards wanting to isolate yourself, especially if you're in school, if you're in university. All of us have a lot going on right now. It's really easy to lean and think that we don't want to have all of these things going on. And it's easy to just become like a little bit hermits, just have a moment on our own. But I worry that sometimes I think I might be doing that too much and prioritizing that too much, and that's actually not as healthy as I think it is. And it's also not as good as I think it is, because being with people other than yourself is important. It's important because it helps you look outwards of yourself. I think if you spend too much time on your own, you can become really focused on your own issues and your own problems. But you need to have a moment with other people. You need to have a moment where you're having your social battery recharged, when you're reconnecting and like connecting with others around you over things that are not work related and are not career related. You need to have conversations that have nothing to do with what you do for your job. You need to make sure that you remind yourself that there is a world outside of this job and this career, because it's important. It is important. Like, we are social people, and it's important to show yourself that you have that community around you that cares. And so, although I feel like I have been doing that little, like, really working hard, focusing on myself, going to the gym, that type of moment for the past couple of weeks, I have felt a little bit lonely at points. And so, like, this week made more of an effort, like, at work and socially, to make sure that I am like making sure that I meet up with people, which feels so stupid to say, like you have to make a conscious effort to make plans. But I think this is one of the biggest things about growing up, is realizing that you have to make conscious effort to do things with people, even if it doesn't feel like that should be a thing. Even if it doesn't feel like you should have to make an active effort, even if it just feels like you should be able to fit each other in. The truth is you can't. The truth is life gets really busy and really chaotic, and there is so much going on, and there are so many different priorities that it is not always easy to fit each other in as easily as you think. And so you have to make that effort that you don't think you should normally make, And I think it's hard because a lot of our friendships in our 20s, we like made it a point where life was entirely different. Like, I think about my friends in London, how easy it was for us all to see each other all of the time because we live with each other. And now obviously I've moved out and it's become harder to see each other, but you still think that that friendship should have that ease of like ability to see each other. You still think that you should just be able to see them all the time, but the reality is it's not like that. Life moves on, and your friendships, like the distance between them changes, and because of that, the amount of times that you see each other changes, and that dynamic in the friendship changes. And so you have to make sure that you're putting the effort in to go and see the people that you really care about, and make sure that you're putting the effort in to stay in contact, because it is really easy to isolate ourselves, especially in the winter months. But that really doesn't end up helping anyone. But let's discuss what I've been up to this week. So last Saturday, what did we do? We had a little movie day. We went to go and watch Hereditary. Heritat. I can't remember what it's called. Herizo? Okay, I'm going to give my full review and the new things I've done this week, but honestly, I enjoyed. Then we went for a lovely walk. It was called Bottoms Reservoir. That was actually its name. But honestly, beautiful. Only cost me £5 to get there from Piccadilly Station. And it was such a lovely walk, and it wasn't that far. And there was a really nice pub at the end. The only issue was most of the trains were cancelled, and so we had to plan it quite well. But we had a lovely day, and it was just nice to get out of the city centre. I think me needing to leave the city centre is something that I'm forgetting and realising more and more, because I do need to get out. You know, I am used to living at home and there being so much free space and so many like places to go and places to breathe. Like, it is important for me to have that time out away from the city and away from like home. And having that made me realise how much space it gave me. And I think we're going to do the same again tomorrow, but I don't know where. Undecided as of yet, but maybe we spoke about Liverpool, but the weather has been awful today. And it's making me realise how much the weather affects my mood. And I just don't, I don't love the rain. And it just makes me think about where I want to live when I'm older that has a beautiful sunny lifestyle that would be close to my family. Like, this is the issue. Everyone's UK based. So where am I meant to go that's sunny a lot of the time, UK based, where I could work? Like, do you know? It's not all adding up, and there's going to have to be a change in countries somewhere, but I just don't know which one. And it's hard predicting which one is going to work best in 2 or 3 years, because I just don't know what I'll be doing then. I don't know where I'll be. And I think this not knowing of what you're doing and not knowing where you'll be is something that I wanted to chat about more on this week's episode of the podcast. Because we're about to enter 2025, and somewhere between here and 2019, like, I grew up. Somewhere between those moments, I grew up, because all of a sudden now I'm about to be turning 25. I'm living in Manchester with my boyfriend. You know, we live in this flat. I have a full-time job. I have my friends and my family that I go back. Like, do you know what I mean? All of these things that are very adult things that are happening in my life, all of a sudden are the new normal. And somewhere between here and then, we did grow up. And I just wanted to chat about that process of growing up in your early 20s, because we're about to enter the mid to late 20s stage. Mid. We're going to go mid. I feel like 24 to 26, 27 is mid, 27 to 30 later, and then you got 30, you know? So I feel like 20 to 23 is early 20s, and 20 to 24 to 20, let's go 27, 28, mid 20s. And I just think, when I look back at my life when I was 19, when I look back at my life when I was 21, 20, I really thought I had everything together. You know, I was living in Leeds, I was completing my degree, me and Louis had just started seeing each other, like, was I 20? Yeah, I was 20. All of these things had been happening that, you know, made me think I really had my life together and made me think I really knew where I was going, and there was definitely this newfound thing of independence. And I think the most interesting part about getting older and about growing up is realizing that the older you get, the younger you feel. And the older that you get, the more you realize you have no idea what is going on. You know, the more naive to the world you feel, because you experience so many things that turn out differently than how you expect them to. And I think there's a naivety in your younger years to really think that you know exactly how everything's going to work, because you've done it before and you know where you're going and you know what you're doing. But the reality is it very rarely turns again into that situation that you're used to it turning into. And when I think about those years, there was definitely this pressure about where I wanted my life to go and what I thought I wanted to do, but also there's so much uncertainty. Like, I would say things that I wanted to do without any knowledge about how it was going to happen. And I think I found a comfort in telling people where I wanted my life to go. I think I found a comfort in creating this plan, and it's made me realize so many important things about having a plan. Because although having a plan for your future in the next 5 years is important, when I think about my 5-year plan when I was 20, you know what? Maybe it did end up here. Maybe it did end up like working a job and living with like my boyfriend and having a nice quality of life and, you know, creating a lifestyle for myself. But there are also many things that didn't work out. And there are also many things that I want now that I didn't even know about. And so although I think having this 5-year plan is good because it kind of keeps you on the straight and narrow, you know, it makes you feel that push to go to where you want to go, It's also tricky because if you link too closely to that 5-year plan, you're going to shut yourself out from so many different opportunities and so many different ways that you think your life could go. And in this next 5 years, it's going to be an exciting 5 years because I think at 24, you're just starting to work yourself out, you know? You're just starting to work out who you are and who you want to be and where you want to go. Because 24, I feel like it's the part where you start to feel like a little bit like, okay, I'm young, but I kind of know what I'm doing and I can hack daily life. Whereas I remember being 23 and just finding everything too much, finding work so much to deal with, finding in my master's so much to deal with, just finding daily life, so many things going on. And now so many of these things that I don't even think about anymore just become that natural part of life because life falls into a routine and you start to get used to that routine. And it makes me excited for the next 5 years because I wonder what parts of my life now I struggle with that will just become a walk in the park. Because with practice, like you become skilled at things and you understand how to manage things. And I think also that experience means that you don't flap as much as you used to flap because you've been through it before and you know how it turned out and you know what to expect and it ended up being okay. Like I think all of those things are important. It's important to experience the world in that way, and it's important to open yourself up to new experiences because then when you face them when you're older, you approach it with such a different mindset. You approach it with a kind of logical way of, I know how to deal with this because I've done it before. And I think over the past 5 years, like 6 years, so many parts of me have stayed the same that I thought were going to change. And I think that's this other notion that you and your ability to like get to know yourself, it gets so much better and you get to know yourself so much more. But on the flip side of that, you not only get to know yourself more, but you realize how constant these things in your life have been, how constant these things are in your character. Because I think when you're in your 20s, you start to really get that, ability to see yourself as a person. And maybe I was just, maybe I think maybe this is like a personal thing about when you really like comprehend who you are and who your soul is and like what it's going to be and who you want to be in the world. But I think when I was 20, I really started to question that. Up until then, it had all been like, teenagers and you're going along with it and it's fun and it's exciting, but you're not really thinking so much about who you are. But when I was 20, all of a sudden, COVID struck and it was just me on my own in the room. And I was like, who am I and who do I want it to be? And then I started to make effort into doing those things that would get me into that person. And I think the loveliest thing that's changed about the way that I perceive myself now is that I've let myself be a bit more. And I think that's important. I think it's important to let yourself be. I think when I was younger, I put a lot of pressure on self-growth and needing to do it all of the time because I felt like that made me a better person. And I felt like that made me kind of like supercharge into growing in who I wanted to be. And I could get that tick box ticked and this project would be complete and I just know who I was and that's that. But another thing that I really noticed over the past 5 years is realizing that in order to get to know yourself, you need to let yourself experience these situations. You need to see how you respond. And it's through those uncomfortable moments where, things don't go to plan that you really learn a lot about yourself. Sometimes you just got to let yourself be. You've got to let yourself feel the feels. You've got to let yourself understand how you're going to approach different situations by actually just approaching them. Just going for it. And just giving it a go and accepting that you're going to make mistakes. And I think this newfound compassion that I have for myself and that I'm trying my best, okay? I'm trying my best. And that's all I can do. And sometimes my best is going to be good enough and sometimes my best isn't going to be good enough and I'm going to make mistakes and I'm going to get called out on it, but I'm trying my best and I'm learning. And I think this way of approaching self-growth and through, I think our work has helped with this. You learn on the job. You learn on the job and that's what you do. And it's terrifying because having to learn on the job means opening yourself up to a lot of different mistakes and, putting yourself in vulnerable positions because it's embarrassing sometimes to feel like not super great at something. Maybe not embarrassing, but like it's uncomfortable to not know what to do and to not know how to do something and to try something new. It is uncomfortable, but it's important to try these new things and to pushing you into growing into that person that you want to become. And when I think about how I've grown up over the past 5 years, I think there is still so much growing left to do, and it's never going to be a work in progress. And that is something that I always thought would happen. You know, I'd be able to tick box it and it would be over. And that's not been the case, because you do just learn more and more about yourself. And so if there was any advice I could give you for being in this early 20s period of your life, it would be to try as many things as possible as you can. Because the more experiences you try, the more experienced you are for this part of your life. And it's not to say put pressure on yourself and put yourself in uncomfortable positions you don't want to be in, because I think that's the other thing. You don't always have to be feeling mega uncomfortable in order to grow, you know? You will grow from your everyday. You will grow from putting yourself just in slightly different scenarios, and you will clock how you handle different things. You've just got to make sure you put aside the time to actually work out how you are going to grow in those. You've got to be consciously questioning yourself in every situation. You've got to put effort in getting to know yourself. And if there is one thing you spend the next couple of years doing, it's really, truly getting to know yourself. Because this relationship that you have with yourself is constantly changing, you know? It's constantly evolving, and it's constantly changing into who you are and who you want to be. And it's like this evolution of you. And it's evolution of understanding of how you are and who you are and where you want to go. And by giving yourself that compassion and that understanding about where you want to go, you allow yourself that flexibility to change. And I don't think it's healthy to think that you have to be the same person all of the time, because this need to be perfect and this need to kind of everything to go right, and it'd be an absolute disaster if it went wrong, has ruined so many things for me. You know, it's ruined so many things where things haven't worked out exactly as I planned. And I think that's the other great thing about kind of growing up and experiencing different things, is that things don't go to plan and you learn how to hack it. And then when things don't go to plan again, you hack it a bit better. And I think it's being a bit less hard on yourself. Because when I think back to my early 20s, I was so hard on myself, you know? I really thought I had to have everything together. I thought, you know what, I'm 22, this is it, I'm a grown up now. I'm an adult. I'm meant to know absolutely everything that I'm doing, but the truth is I don't, and I'm scared and I miss my mum and I want to move home. Yeah, you know, the truth is that I don't know exactly what I'm doing and don't know where I'm going, and I really think this might be a wrong decision. But sometimes those uncomfortable ones are the most important, because they make you grow and they make you make choices that put you into the positions you are today. And when I look at my life in London, if I had never taken the leap, if I'd never done that in my early 20s, I don't know if I'd have done that again. And maybe I would, because we don't know what our lives would have turned into. But what I'm saying is, like, just do the things you're scared to do. Do the things that you really want to do. Listen to that gut, because your early 20s is this time where there is no pressure, really. You know, no one's expecting anything of you. You're 22, 23, and I'm not saying there's expectations at other ages, but there really is no expectations at your age. So just go where the wind takes you. Listen to that voice inside your head. Listen to your gut feeling. Let yourself experience all of the experiences. Really just let yourself embrace the world. All of a sudden, you are at the age where you can really start to question who you are and who you want to be and where you want to go in the world. And you can start doing things that are going to let you experience that and work out who that is. And you can start creating a life from yourself properly. Because when you're 18 and 19, you're not an adult. And I'm sorry, whoever said 18 was the legal age of being an adult was wrong. Because when I think back to myself age 18, that I was not an adult. I did not know what I was doing. I did not know where I was going. 18 should just be the legal age you can start drinking, you know? It should have no indication on you being an adult, because the only times I have properly felt like an adult were in the past couple of years, and really only this year. The only time I felt like I'm starting to get my shit together was this year, okay? And I'm sure some things will happen where it'll all blow out of proportion again. And it's just ebbs and flows, and having that compassion from yourself and the understanding that, you know, there's going to be moments that are really great and there's going to be moments that are really hard. And it's learning to just deal with that, to deal with the ebbs and flows, to deal with you working out who you want to be, and to allow yourself the compassion and the flexibility to grow into that person. Because otherwise, you're going to hit your late 20s and you're going to realize that you never allowed yourself to experience everything that was going on. Because everyone talks about these periods of our life as like the prime years. And I think in a way that's a bit toxic, because for me, like, there's been years that were meant to be my prime years that weren't, but were for other people. And them telling me that those are their prime years made me feel so much worse about it not all going to plan, and me feeling a bit shit about them. And so I don't want to say like these are your years and you're meant to be having the best time ever, but like you could have a good time right now. And it's important to work out how that could happen. But anyway, to round up this part of the episode, I think it's just important in this part to realize that all of a sudden you're going to hit 24, 25 like I have, and it is going to be a moment where you realize and you look back and you realize you have grown up. You know, you've become an adult. You don't know what you want to do in your life. You don't know where you want to go, but you do know what you're doing right now. And maybe being an adult isn't having it all figured out. Maybe being an adult is just knowing who you are, okay? And knowing what you think is the right decision. And knowing to trust your gut and having that belief in yourself. It's not having this massive, massive plan, but it's knowing that when you are faced with a decision, that you can make a decision that is going to make you happy. And that you can make a decision that prioritizes who you are. And at some point between your early 20s and mid 20s, you're going to reach this period where you realize you can make those decisions. Like, you know who you want to be, you know where you want to go, you know where you want your life to head. And although you might not know where that although you might not know where that end point is, you kind of have a clearer idea about how you're going to get there. And that is equally as rewarding. But anyway, on to the question part of this week's podcast. Okay. First question. Okay. First question. If you strip back all of your hobbies, interests, and achievements, who are you? Like, what makes you you? I think, this feels quite like a personal question. I think I like to look for all of like the little good things that happen in the world. Like, I think I have a tendency to care too much, and that's why I worry about so many things, is because I care so deeply about things. And I used to find that an annoying thing, but I've now realized that caring so deeply about things also means like I love things so deeply, and also means that like I try and find so many good things around myself, and focusing on the positive things that are happening is something that I really try. And I think that's something that has been quite defining for me, is trying to just create the best possible situation that I possibly can. And I think caring deeply about everything in my life is something that is always going to be such a defining feature about me. And being someone who's like deeply empathetic to the people around me means that I just want to help. I'm such a helper. Like, I cannot stand not helping the situation. And so I think maybe that's what I'm defined by. All of these things that I've wanted to do, I've wanted to make like a positive difference on something other than myself, to be able to look back and know that like my time here, like, you know, like I paid it forward in some way. Like, I just paid it forward, and in the hopes that like me paying it forward would make someone else pay it forward. And even if it just makes like one person a little bit kinder than, you know, the last person, even that's had a positive difference. And I think that attitude of needing to have that positive difference and needing to pay it forward has become something that's really like a focus in a lot of the things that I do, and a lot of like the career choices, and like You've Got Mail and kind of the content I create. Like, that's something that's been really important to me, and I think has been something that's been quite defining. So I think that's like a big part of who I am. How do you manage feeling lonely in your 20s when all your friends/siblings are busy? I think being lonely in your 20s is something that we all experience so much, because social media convinces you that everyone around you in your life has so much going on, and they have so many people, and they are having the best time ever. But as soon as you reach out and actually speak to that person, you find out how many other things are going on that you had no idea about. And so I think you manage feeling lonely in your 20s by, first off, it's a coming of age thing. I think feeling lonely becomes less and less the older you get, because you realize that alone time is something that is very special and very rare, because there feels like there's this period of your time where you're alone quite a lot, and then it gets less and less as you start full-time work, as you go into education, like as you live with different people, it changes. But I think you managing feeling lonely in your 20s, first off by realizing just because they're busy doesn't mean they don't want to be with you. It just means they have other plans, and that's okay, you know? It's not a reflection on you. They're not connected. And I think a big part about growing up is realizing the connections that are there and realizing the connections that aren't there, and not letting your brain form those ones that aren't, because they can destroy a really good relationship by you making things form together when they don't actually. by you thinking that, oh, they've gone out for dinner with that person instead of going out for dinner with me when you asked last minute and they've had that booked in for the last 3 weeks, I think it's really important to question when those connections are happening. So I think you're first off managing it by, sometimes you have to give yourself a reality check. You have to really ask yourself, is this truth or is this what my brain is making me believe as a worst case scenario? And then I think you manage feeling lonely in your 20s by first off being proactive with making plans and actively reaching out and not just expecting everyone else to do it for you. Not that I'm saying you do that, but really trying to make those plans when you want to make them. Then equally making plans when you're on your own. Because I think when you start creating this alone time as a space where you can do things that you really enjoy, you realize it's not time wasted. Because I think that's a lot where this loneliness stems from, is it feels like it's time wasted. And it's not to say you wouldn't enjoy doing it with another person, but it's also fun to still do things on your own. And so I think that's important. What would you tell someone going through the most anxious time of their lives? I would tell them it will pass. Because things always pass. And this anxious moment you will get through, and you will face the next day, and you will get through that, and you'll face the next day, and you will get through that. And all of a sudden you'll realize that this anxious feeling that's been so overwhelming has been slowly melting away like an ice cream. And drip by drip, that anxiety that you've been dealing with has got less and less. And all of a sudden you'll realize you're able to process things so much better. And your brain feels a bit clearer. And you know kind of what's going on. You don't feel quite so overwhelmed. And all of these things that felt so much all at once start to feel not so much anymore. And so I tell you, it's going to pass. This anxious feeling that is feeling so overwhelming right now is going to pass. And you're going to feel happy, and you're going to feel joy, and all of those great emotions that have taken part in your life so far will come again. You just have to be kind to yourself and let yourself get through this part right now. Because I don't know the situation why you're feeling anxious, and I can't, I don't know what's going on. But as someone who's felt quite anxious a lot of the time, it passes. And you feel really good at other moments of time as well, and it might come back again and you'll deal with it because you get so much better at dealing with things as you get older. I think that's one of the great reassurances. It's like, it doesn't get harder, it gets better because you learn how to logically, I've learned how to logically reason with myself. And that's been, a relief. How do you remain so kind to us all on Instagram? Do you remain genuinely kind to yourself too? I think I try and project. No. Okay. Final 2 questions. What's your best way to break cycles of bad habits and being comfortable with being uncomfortable? I think my best tip is sometimes you just have to do it. Sometimes you just have to stop moaning. Sometimes you just have to do it. And it's uncomfortable. And you just have to get on board with doing that. And you just have to have the mindset that this relationship that you have with yourself, that promise that you make with yourself is important. Because that is the promise that is showing you that you care. That you care about this life that you're creating. You have to honor that promise, just like you would to another friend. Because if you had a friend and you kept cancelling on them every single week, they wouldn't be your friend anymore. And it's realizing that relationship that you have with yourself and those promises that you make to yourself are equally as important. Because that's showing you that you care. And so I think you get uncomfortable being uncomfortable when you realize how important that uncomfortable feeling is, because the reward you feel afterwards is so worth it. And the first time will be the worst time. I think that's something that also helps me a lot. It's like breaking bad habits. The first time is the worst time. It's not going to be worse than this. And just doing it, not overthinking it too much and not overthinking it too dramatically either. Not thinking this is it for the rest of my life. Just thinking this is it for today. We'll cross tomorrow. We're not going to think about it all at once, because it's an overwhelming thing to think about breaking that bad habit for an entire year or 3 years or 5 years or for the rest of your life. But it's easier to think for the next 24 hours, I'm going to decide not to do this. And if tomorrow I do it, it's not amazing, but it's not the worst thing in the world either. It doesn't make me a bad person. Obviously dependent on what the habit is, but you can try again. 99 good days, the one bad day doesn't ruin all of them, So I think that you break the cycle by not putting so much pressure on yourself, by just facing the next 24 hours and then making that decision every 24 hours and realizing that promise to yourself is important. But on to the final part of this week's podcast, which is the new things I've done this week. And first thing, went to see Hereditary, like I said. Great film. I really enjoyed. I felt like the ending felt a bit rushed. I could have done with another 30 minutes because I thought it was really clever. I love A24, and I just thought it was like a great film. Next thing I've watched, last night we watched, Joy. It's like the film on IVF. I really enjoyed it, but we only got halfway through, but I feel like it had a great promise. It was quite a slow burner, but it was just an interesting storyline because I didn't know anything about how that journey had happened, and it's something that's so interesting and tip biology, So all of these things I find very interesting, so I enjoyed that. The other film we watched was Midnight in Paris. Questionable. Great film, but also terrible film. But you have to lean into it being terrible and then it becomes great. But like some of the things in it, so shocking. Just so bad. So bad. We did watch a really good film on the Tuesday, Crazy Stupid Love. We're in a film era at the moment and I'm not mad about it. I love a film moment. Crazy Stupid Love, what an underrated film. Really enjoyed that. It's got everything going on in it and everything comes together. It's just a very satisfying film to watch. And we've also started Harry Potter. Honestly, I've watched non-stop films this week and I'm a massive fan. I've got 2 new books to start reading. One, yeah, you know what? I'm not going to say anything about them until I've given them this week. We'll report back again next week. Been to Ask for dinner. We went to ramen something today in like near Northern Quarter. Out of 10, I'd say a 7 out of 10. I don't think it was the best ramen I've ever had, but it was nice. But it wasn't, maybe like 6.5, 7. It got rated really highly, but maybe I just picked badly, but I didn't love it. But I think maybe I just wasn't going to love anything today, and that's okay. Not to say it's bad, it was delicious. No, 6.5 is harsh, 7. A solid 7 out of 10. The atmosphere was lovely. All the staff really lovely, and the food was very quick, and I feel like it was good, but I don't feel like it's the best one I've had in Manchester. Other things that I'm doing this week, I think we're going to go for another walk tomorrow because getting out of the city is important. But honestly, I think we're going to watch Tenet, because it looks great and I feel like I'm in the mood for like a good film. Again, entering my film era for winter and I'm not mad about it. But thank you for listening. I hope you have a lovely, lovely week and I can't wait to speak to you again next week. Make sure you're following me on Instagram and on TikTok at YouGotMail_pod and I will speak to you again soon. I love you. Bye.